Welcome to our deep dive into the world of graphic design.
Yeah.
And we're going to be looking through the eyes of Michael Bierut,
Oh,
and we're exploring his book.
okay.
It's called How to Use Graphic Design to Sell Things, Explain Things, Make Things Look Better, Make People Laugh, Make People Cry, and every once in a while, change the world.
Hmm.
And that title kind of gives us a hint at the journey we're about to take.
It really does, yeah.
Yeah,
This is not your average how-to design book. It's
right,
not just like pick a font and you're done.
right.
Biru takes us behind the scenes of these really remarkable projects that he's worked on,
Yes.
and he shows how design can be this powerful tool for communication, problem solving, even cultural commentary.
Absolutely. And he's coming at it from such a unique vantage point. I
Yeah.
mean, as a partner at Pentagram,
Yes.
one of the most prestigious design firms in the
One
world.
of, if not the,
Yeah.
yeah. And he weaves these personal anecdotes throughout the book.
Yeah.
You get these glimpses into how he's evolved as a designer. And he starts by taking us all the way back to his childhood
Yep.
in Parma, Ohio,
Okay.
where he would spend his Saturdays taking art classes at the Cleveland Museum of Art.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So imagine like 7-year-old Michael meticulously copying like a JMW Turner masterpiece.
So what do you think young Michael was absorbing during those early museum visits? Was it purely technical or was it something more?
I think it had to do with developing a visual sensitivity
Okay.
and appreciation, and seeing his work displayed so prominently throughout the school. He kind of had this realization
Yeah.
about the potential for design to reach a wide audience
Right.
and have a real impact.
It's interesting how that early experience of public display resonated with him.
Yeah.
Because even as a kid, he's like, wow,
Right.
people are looking at this thing that I made.
Yeah, it's powerful.
So as he got deeper into graphic design, he sought out knowledge. He even asked for a graphic design manual by Armin Hoffman for Christmas.
Ah, yes.
But that's not the book that he received, is it?
Classic holiday gift mishap.
Yeah.
His mom accidentally bought him graphic design by Milton Glaser instead.
Wow, what a happy accident, though.
Totally.
Because Glazer is so iconic and influential.
Absolutely.
So what do you think young Michael took away from that unexpected encounter with Glazer's book?
So it exposed him to this totally different approach to design.
Okay.
One that embraced wit and playfulness,
Mm-hmm.
which really contrasted with the kind of rigid structure of modernism
Yeah.
that Hoffman represented.
Yes.
And this early exposure to those very different styles
Right.
probably influenced his later willingness to experiment
Yes.
and transcend any single aesthetic.
Right.
Like he didn't want to get pigeonholed into one specific style.
Right, which is interesting because his first job out of school was for Massimo Vignelli,
Yes,
who was known for his minimalist, modernist approach.
very much so, yeah.
So talk about that experience.
It's fascinating. He describes his time at Vignelli's firm. He was initially drawn to the clarity and simplicity of that style.
Okay.
He even became kind of a compulsive mimic of it for a while.
Mm.
But then a key project for the International Design Center kind of forced him to break free from that mold.
Okay, tell me more about that project. What was the challenge?
So he was tasked with designing 2 separate invitations.
Okay.
One was for an exhibition of experimental furniture, and the other one was for this showcase of spacecraft interiors.
So very different vibes.
Totally different. Yeah.
I can't even imagine trying to merge those two things together.
Right. And then came the budget cuts.
Oh.
So they could only afford one invitation.
Oh my gosh.
And it just seemed like this impossible task to reconcile those 2 completely different themes
Yes.
into one invitation.
So how did he solve this design puzzle?
Well, almost as a joke,
Okay.
he drew this picture of a table and a vase
Okay.
that when you flip it upside down, it becomes a rocket ship.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, and the client loved it.
Of course they did. That's amazing. So this breakthrough wasn't just about clever visuals.
Right?
This was a deeper realization about the role of ideas in design.
Exactly. Precisely. Yeah, it was kind of a turning point for him,
Okay.
where it was like a shift from focusing solely on style to prioritizing the power of a strong concept,
Right.
the idea first.
This reminds me of the other anecdote you mentioned about using his 4-year-old daughter's handwriting for an entire poster.
Yeah.
Talk about a playful approach,
Yeah.
but it's definitely breaking the rules.
Hmm.
What's the takeaway there?
I think it highlights that sometimes breaking the rules, or at least, I don't know, conventional design wisdom,
Yeah.
it can lead to the most effective communication.
Right.
It's not about being rebellious just to be rebellious.
Right.
It's about understanding when a unique approach will better serve that concept.
So, rule breaking with a purpose.
Right.
Now, let's get into some of his projects
Okay.
that really showcase this design philosophy in action.
Yes.
And I think a great place to start is the Brooklyn Academy of Music.
GAM.
AM.
Yes.
And what's interesting about this rebranding project is that he initially chose not to create a logo.
Yeah, that's a fascinating part of this story.
So how do you establish a visual identity
Mm-hmm.
without a logo, without that central element?
That's what makes this approach so intriguing, right?
Yeah.
They achieved a strong, recognizable identity through consistent typographic treatment,
Good.
using this typeface called News Gothic.
Okay.
And coincidentally, it was designed in the same year that BAM's Opera House opened.
Oh, wow. So there's a nice little historical connection there.
Little tie-in.
But what does that mean, consistent typographic treatment?
Okay, so that means that every piece of communication, from posters to brochures to even signage,
Okay.
it all used the same typeface
All right.
and a very specific set of rules for how that typeface was displayed.
Okay.
So think about the size, the spacing, the weight,
Okay.
even the way that the letters were sometimes chopped up or rearranged. It all kind of contributes to this really distinctive look and feel.
Right.
And for BAM, that approach provided this kind of flexibility and visual interest,
Okay.
allowing them to create a huge variety of materials that were still identifiable as belonging to that institution.
So they established that strong foundation through typography,
Yes.
and then later they introduced a logo. So it wasn't an arbitrary symbol.
Right.
It grew out of that typographic
It
system.
was born from it, yeah.
That's a great example of how design thinking can be applied to build a cohesive and lasting identity.
It is, yeah.
Now, speaking of building, one of the most unique projects in the book involves designing an entire town
Yes.
built by Disney in Florida. Celebration.
Celebration, yes. This project was a fascinating exploration of creating a sense of place,
Okay.
crafting an experience through design.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, despite aiming for that classic all-American Main Street feel,
Okay.
there's actually no street named Main Street in Celebration.
Really?
Yeah.
That is curious. Why? Why is that?
Well, apparently there was already a street named Main Street in Osceola County where Celebration is located.
Oh, okay.
But this seemingly small omission highlights how these kind of unexpected constraints
Yeah.
can actually shape the design solution.
Interesting. And what other kind of unexpected design choices were made for Celebration?
So they meticulously considered every single detail,
Okay.
from manhole covers to this central fountain that they designed
Mm-hmm.
with compass points that connect the community to the rest of the world.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's almost like stepping into this meticulously crafted movie set.
It sounds like a whole immersive experience, like a story you can walk through.
Yeah, it is.
So it makes me think about the role of storytelling in design.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that comes up often in Bierut's work?
Absolutely. And one project that really highlights the narrative power of design
Okay.
was his work on Princeton University's fundraising campaign.
Oh, okay.
And this was a challenge that made him initially uncomfortable.
Really?
He was accustomed to a more transactional approach to design.
Right.
But fundraising is all about connecting with people's emotions
Right.
and inspiring them to give.
Yeah.
And that's not really something that he was used to.
So how did his initial discomfort shape the design solutions that he came up with?
Well, because he wasn't steeped in that traditional, often formal language of fundraising.
Yeah.
He approached the project with these fresh eyes,
Okay.
and he focused on crafting communications that felt really authentic
Okay.
and told compelling stories that resonated with the alumni on a personal level.
So were the alumni receptive to this new style of communication?
They were. The campaign exceeded all expectations, raising $1.2 billion,
Wow.
which was far surpassing their initial goal of $750 million.
That's incredible.
And this just goes to show that stepping outside of your comfort zone and approaching a challenge with a fresh perspective can actually lead to this kind of unexpected success.
It's almost like he was the perfect person for the job because he didn't know all the rules.
It's true. Yeah, he was able to come in and kind of shake things up,
Right.
do things differently.
And it worked.
Yeah.
And this seems to be a pattern in his career. He's not afraid to tackle these diverse projects, to push himself beyond what's familiar.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that makes his work so interesting. He
Yeah.
constantly challenges himself and the field of design as a whole.
Yes.
And up next, we're going to dive into a project that's near and dear to the hearts of many New Yorkers. the rebranding of the New York Jets.
Okay, now that's a story I want to hear. What was some of the key design challenges in rebranding such a well-known and beloved team?
Well, for starters, they had to capture the essence of the Jets,
Okay.
their energy, their history, their grit,
Right.
but also, create a visual identity that felt fresh and modern at the same time.
Yeah.
And they had to do all of this while navigating the expectations and opinions of passionate fans.
I can only imagine the pressure, and I'm sure Bierut found a way to turn those challenges into some creative opportunities.
He did indeed, and we'll get into all the details right after this. So,
Yeah.
the New York Jets, for this rebranding, they brought in these renowned type designers, Jonathan Hoefler and Tobias Frere-Jones.
Okay.
And together, they crafted this custom typeface called Jets Bold, using only the letters J, E, T, and S.
Oh, a typeface built solely from the team's name.
Yeah.
That's really clever. I'm guessing there's more to it than just spelling out Jets over and over again.
Yeah, so to amplify that kind of bold, powerful feeling,
Right.
they designed it so that it exists only in one style.
Mm-hmm.
Extra heavy, super italic.
Oh, wow.
So every word, every headline, it just carries this inherent intensity.
That's perfect for a football team.
Yeah.
It's like the typography itself embodies that on-field energy.
Right.
Did they weave any other unique elements into the branding
Oh, they did.
to kind of further enhance that?
They integrated the team's iconic chant, Jets, Jets into the visual identity.
Of course. I mean, that chant's practically part of the team's DNA.
Right.
So I'm starting to see how Bierut consistently taps into the essence of a brand,
Yeah.
not just its surface appearance.
Yeah, he's really good at that.
Yeah.
He does his research. He digs deep to understand the client's story, their values, their aspirations.
Right.
And this is even apparent in his work for something as seemingly straightforward as a diner.
Really?
Yeah. So, the good diner.
I'm intrigued. How does a diner with its classic, almost generic aesthetic offer an opportunity for this kind of deep design thinking?
So for the good diner, he really embraced this idea of what's called vernacular design.
Okay.
So think about those kind of quintessential diner qualities, like unpretentious, familiar,
Right.
a bit rough around the edges.
Yeah.
And he wanted the design to really reflect that authenticity.
So did he meticulously research vintage diner signage or pore over old menus?
He took a much more direct approach.
Okay.
For the neon sign, he didn't provide a detailed drawing or anything.
Right.
He literally phoned the fabricator and dictated the design over the phone.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay, so was he at least specific about the font or the spacing?
He instructed them to make the second line the largest, the first and third lines slightly smaller,
Okay.
and so on.
Yeah.
But for the colors, he simply said, use whatever you think looks nice.
Wow, that's a lot of trust in the collaborator.
It is.
What do you think he was going for with this kind of hands-off approach?
So I think he was consciously trying to avoid overthinking it
Okay.
or over-designing it.
Right.
He wanted to have that kind of spontaneous, almost accidental charm
Right.
that's so characteristic of those classic diner signs.
That's a great example of how understanding the context and the spirit of a project can lead to unconventional but effective design choices.
Yes.
So what happens when we move from the casual world of diners to the more formal realm of architecture?
So he's had a long-standing collaboration with the Architectural League of New York,
Okay.
designing programs for their lectures and events.
Okay.
And his posters for their Emerging Voices series, which features these up-and-coming architects from around the world, are really interesting.
Okay, so what's unique about these posters? Do they showcase architectural drawings, photos of buildings?
Not quite. So he's a self-proclaimed album cover nerd, and he admits to being heavily influenced by his childhood obsession with album covers,
Okay.
especially those created for the band Chicago.
Okay.
So these posters are actually a playful homage to those iconic designs with their bold typography and vibrant geometric patterns.
That's fantastic. It's like he's weaving his own personal nostalgia into his design work.
Yeah, a little bit.
Now, speaking of inspiration, let's move from the world of music to the realm of high fashion.
Okay.
Bierut also tackled a rebranding project for Saks Fifth Avenue.
Yes, he did.
Saks Fifth Avenue. So how did he approach such an iconic and luxurious brand?
So they did create a new logo,
Okay.
but it was less about a complete overhaul, more about a clever reimagining of their existing assets.
Okay.
So they took the store's classic cursive logo
Right.
and deconstructed it.
Deconstructed, what does that mean?
So they basically divided it into these 64 squares,
Okay.
each one becoming this mini abstract composition.
Right.
And then they could rearrange and combine those squares in
Oh.
countless ways,
Okay.
creating this dynamic, ever-changing visual system.
Wow. So they essentially turned the logo into a set of building blocks,
Right.
allowing for endless possibilities. And I imagine this was particularly effective for their packaging.
You're right. So the shopping bags and boxes kind of became this expression of the brand,
Right.
this canvas for these abstract patterns
Oh.
derived from that logo.
So it signaled a fresh, modern direction for Seth's,
Yes.
while still respecting its heritage.
Exactly.
Now, Bierut's work wasn't confined to the United States.
Right.
He also had projects abroad.
He did.
A fascinating example is his work for New York University's Abu Dhabi campus.
Yes.
And it was a unique challenge because they have the iconic NYU torch.
Right.
But they needed a visual identity that felt at home in Abu Dhabi.
Right.
So how did they reconcile those two seemingly disparate elements?
So instead of altering the torch itself, they found inspiration in Islamic art,
Okay.
specifically the intricate patterns and the vibrant colors.
Right.
And by rotating and repeating that torch,
Okay.
they created this beautiful arabesque motif that became this signature element of the branding.
So it's like the torch is woven into the cultural fabric of Abu Dhabi.
Exactly, yeah.
This idea of contrasting elements working in harmony reminds me of the other project you mentioned, the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine
Oh, yeah, good one.
in New York City.
Yeah.
So this project was all about navigating that tension between the historical and the contemporary.
It was, yes.
You have this grand historic building with all of its traditional architectural elements,
Right,
and then you have the need for a modern visual communication system.
exactly.
So did they go super modern, minimalist to contrast with the building's grandeur?
Interestingly, they went in a slightly different direction.
Okay.
So they chose this typeface called Divine, which is actually a digitized version of this 1928 blackletter font.
Black letter. That's an unexpected choice for a contemporary design project.
It might seem that way, but this particular blackletter font, with its Gothic influences, has been kind of updated for the digital age.
Okay.
So it really has a foot in both worlds.
Right.
And then to further play with this juxtaposition, they paired that typeface with a very contemporary tone of voice in their messaging.
Oh, I like that. Can you give an example?
Yeah. So one poster for their Great Oregon series used the slogan, "Live to ride, ride to live."
Wait, isn't that a Harley Davidson?
It is.
I love that. It's like they're winking at the audience.
They are.
Acknowledging this contrast between the traditional and the modern.
Exactly, yeah.
Yep.
It's very playful and engaging.
Speaking of engaging, let's talk about a project that really pushed the boundaries of signage, the New York Times building.
Okay.
So that's Renzo Piano's masterpiece, a beautiful building, but it's mostly glass. How do you even create effective signage for a building that's essentially transparent?
Yeah, so that was the challenge. And to add another layer of complexity, Times Square has these unique zoning regulations
Right.
that actually require these large, flashy signs.
Right. You can't just blend in.
Right, exactly. So they couldn't just go for a sleek, minimalist aesthetic.
Okay.
So they devised this clever and elegant solution.
Okay.
They installed the iconic New York Times nameplate,
Right.
110 feet long,
Okay.
on the 8th Avenue facade,
Okay.
but they didn't want to obstruct the view from inside the building.
I understand. So how did they make it visible from the street, but practically invisible from the inside?
It's so cool. So the sign is made of almost 1,000 small, teardrop-shaped pieces of metal.
Okay.
Each one is carefully attached to the building's grid of ceramic rods.
Right.
And from street level, the teardrop beaks overlap, making the sign appear solid.
Okay.
But from inside, those same teardrops are practically invisible.
Oh, wow. Design magic.
It really is.
Did they do anything else to bring warmth and personality to the interior?
They did. So to kind of counter that potential coldness of all that glass and steel,
Yeah.
they designed over 800 unique room and door signs,
Wow.
each one featuring a different image
Okay.
from the Times' vast photo archive.
Oh, that's cool. So even the signage tells a story.
Yeah,
It's reflecting the institution's history.
right, exactly.
That's a nice touch. I'm sensing a pattern here.
Mm-hmm.
Bierut's work is never just about slapping a logo on something.
No,
It's about infusing design with meaning and purpose.
it is.
And that philosophy extends to his work for museums as well.
Yes.
Let's head to Columbus Circle. And check out his project for the Museum of Arts and Design.
Amazing.
Nady.
Yeah.
What was the design challenge there? Were they looking for a completely new logo?
They were. And he initially had this really elaborate idea based on the building's original facade.
Okay.
But as he kind of explored the concept further, he realized it was becoming too complex and difficult to execute.
So he had to go back to the drawing board.
He did.
What sparked the idea for the final logo?
It was this moment of serendipitous observation. He was just staring at the site, and he noticed something interesting. Amity faces the only complete traffic circle in Manhattan.
Oh, right.
So circles and squares, and then it hit him. The letters M, A, and D can also be formed using circles and squares.
Oh, that's amazing. And it's like the solution was right there in front of him the whole time.
Right.
So the resulting logo, based on this simple geometric connection,
Yeah.
was a hit. It's memorable, it's playful, it reflects the museum's focus on art and design.
Perfectly, yeah.
It's amazing he finds inspiration in these unexpected places, whether it's album covers or traffic circles.
Right.
And he's not afraid to embrace these constraints and turn them into creative opportunities.
It's a good lesson.
That is a good lesson. Now let's delve into the world of book cover design,
Right.
because that's a whole other realm of graphic design.
It is.
And I've always been fascinated by those covers that instantly draw you in,
Yeah.
the ones that feel like a window into the book's soul.
Mm-hmm. He believes that book cover design is kind of the ultimate design challenge
Okay.
because you have to capture the essence of this entire book in a single compelling image.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
It is. And his approach is really all about letting the content guide the design,
Okay.
reflecting the book's themes and ideas in this visually striking way.
So no generic stock photos or cheesy illustrations.
Definitely not. No. He often uses typography as like the primary visual element,
Okay.
creating covers that are bold and thought-provoking.
Okay, can you give me an example?
Yeah, so for the book God, a biography,
Hi.
he literally let the three-letter title speak for itself,
Okay.
blowing it up so large that it couldn't even be contained fully on the cover.
That's powerful. It makes a statement
It does.
about the book's subject matter.
Right.
It's like, this is a big topic.
Right, exactly. And then for a memoir about raising a child with autism,
Okay.
he actually altered the typography to suggest the struggle
Okay.
of a mother and daughter to communicate.
Okay.
So the letters are jumbled. They're overlapping,
Okay.
almost impossible to decipher in times.
Right.
And it mirrors those challenges of communication that are depicted in the book.
Wow, that's really thoughtful.
Yeah.
It's showing how he's using design to create empathy and understanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
These book covers sound like works of art in themselves.
They are.
Did he ever design logos for companies, or were most of his projects these kind of large-scale branding efforts?
No, he's designed logos for a whole range of clients,
Okay.
from publishers to boutique hotels.
Okay.
And like his other work, his logos are characterized by a clever simplicity,
Okay.
often finding meaning in those really basic forms.
Okay, give me some highlights
Okay.
from his logo collection.
All right, so let's start with Harlequin Enterprises, the romance novel publisher.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he played with the double L in Harlequin,
Okay.
creating this symbol that looks like two figures intertwined.
Ah, cute. Perfect for romance novels.
Right. It's subtle but effective.
Yes, it is.
And for Success Academy, a network of charter schools, he used the number 1 to create a simple but memorable logo.
So simple, but again, effective. What about logos for organizations with less obvious visual metaphors, like a city agency?
Okay, so for the New York City Economic Development Corporation, he designed this logo that kind of resembles a rising skyline,
Okay.
subtly conveying this sense of growth and progress.
Very appropriate for an
Yeah.
organization like that.
Yeah, and for 21C Hotels, this chain of art-infused boutique hotels,
Okay.
he created this logo with the number 21 nestled inside a lowercase c.
Oh, clever.
Yes.
I like that. So these logos are so diverse, they each have their own personality,
Right.
yet they share a certain Bierut-esque quality,
Yeah.
and that's what makes them effective.
It is, because he understands that a logo is more than just a pretty picture.
Right.
It's this visual representation of a brand's values, its aspirations.
Absolutely. And I feel like he's not afraid to tackle those projects that are a little bit outside the box.
You're thinking about 50 designers, 50 votomatics.
I am. The one with the voting machines?
Yeah,
What a fascinating concept.
it was.
It sounds more like an art installation than a typical graphic design project.
Yeah, it was this really unique blend of art, design, and even social commentary.
Right.
So you remember the 2000 election debacle?
Oh, yeah, the butterfly ballots.
Exactly, the infamous butterfly ballots.
In Florida.
In Florida, yes. So after that whole mess,
Right.
Florida decommissioned all of its Votomatic portable voting booths
Okay.
and put them up for sale on eBay.
What? On eBay?
I know.
Oh,
And they sold.
they did. This New York City hotelier, Andre Balaz, bought 100 of them.
100.
100.
Okay.
For $10 each.
What a deal.
Yeah.
So what did he do with all those voting machines?
Well, he gave some to friends,
Okay.
and then he donated the rest to Parsons School of Design for this exhibition.
Okay.
And so 50 designers and artists, including Bierut,
Okay.
were invited to transform these booths in any way they saw fit.
Wow, what a cool challenge.
Yeah.
That's a very different canvas than a poster or a book cover. Yeah, very different. So some designers created these really intricate and delicate installations,
Okay.
exploring themes of democracy and the right to vote.
Okay.
And then there's Bierut. He and his partner, Jim Biber, took a much more direct and, I would say, visceral approach.
Okay.
They drove over their Votomatic booth with a 1.5-ton steamroller.
They were a
I'm-
steamroller?
A steamroller.
Did it even flatten?
Surprisingly, those Votomatics are pretty sturdy. It took multiple passes.
Wow.
But they created this sculpture reminiscent of John Chamberlain's work,
Okay.
known for his crushed car sculptures.
Okay, yeah, so that's quite a statement.
Yeah.
Very different from the other designers who are going for something more delicate.
Very much so.
Yeah?
And to make their message even clearer, they placed a tiny plastic elephant on top of the flattened booth.
I see what they did there.
Yeah.
So a subtle but powerful commentary on the weight of political power.
Exactly.
It's amazing how design can be used to spark those important conversations.
It can.
And that it's not just about aesthetics. It can be a powerful tool for expression and activism.
Right.
Now, let's shift gears and head back in time
Right.
to explore Bierut's work on one of Manhattan's most iconic skyscrapers, Lever House.
Okay.
Lever House, the glass and steel beauty. What was his involvement there?
So the building had undergone these renovations,
Okay.
and they needed a new signage program
Okay.
that would really complement its architectural significance.
So did they opt for a classic modernist typeface?
They considered that,
Okay.
but they ultimately decided on a more unique approach.
Okay.
So the building's original signage, though damaged and faded, had this really distinct character to it
Okay.
that they didn't want to lose.
Right.
So they brought in the type design dream team, Jonathan Hoefler and Tobias Fuhrer-Jones.
Again. So what did
Yeah.
they do? Recreate the original signage?
They went a step further.
Okay.
They created a custom typeface based on that vintage Lever House lettering.
Wow, a whole new typeface just for this one building. That's dedication.
It is. But they only had a few letters to work with from the damaged signage.
Right. So how did they?
It was this painstaking process of extrapolation.
Okay.
They had to imagine the rest of the alphabet
Wow.
based on those limited samples.
Yeah.
But they managed to create this typeface that felt both familiar and completely original,
Wow.
perfectly capturing the spirit of Lever House.
Like they brought the building's typographic voice back to life.
Yeah, they did.
This makes me think about how much we take signage for granted.
They know.
It's everywhere, but we rarely stop to appreciate the thought and the craftsmanship that goes into it.
You're right. Signage plays such an important role in our experience of the built environment.
Absolutely.
It guides us, it informs us, and sometimes, as in the case of Lever House, it even adds to the aesthetic beauty of a place.
Right. It's not just functional, it's an art form in itself.
Absolutely.
Speaking of navigating the built environment, let's talk about Bierut's work on United Airlines.
Okay. Because that's a project that involved a lot of moving parts.
It did. It was this massive rebranding effort.
Right.
They were tasked with creating a new brand identity for the airline.
Okay.
And it involved not just a new look, but like this completely new approach to the passenger experience as a whole.
Did they design a completely new logo?
So interestingly, they decided to revive that classic tulip logo designed by Saul Bass back in 1973.
The tulips. I remember that logo.
Yeah.
It had sort of fallen out of favor, hadn't it?
It had.
Yeah.
But they felt that it still held a lot of potential. It has this kind of timeless quality to it.
Yes.
That could be reinterpreted for the modern age.
I love that. I love when brands rediscover their heritage
Yeah.
and find ways to make it relevant again.
Mm-hmm.
So they brought back the tulip, But what else did they do to kind of refresh the United brand?
So their approach was all about branding without branding,
Okay.
meaning they really focused on the passenger experience
Okay.
rather than just the visual identity.
So they designed everything from ticket dispensers and menus to even the blankets and pillows,
Okay.
all with this focus on functionality and simplicity.
So it was about creating a cohesive and positive experience across all touch points,
Exactly.
not just a flashy new logo.
Right.
Did this focus on the passenger experience extend to the planes themselves?
Absolutely. So they redesigned the interiors of the planes,
Okay.
making them more comfortable and modern.
Okay.
And they finally repainted the exteriors of the planes
Okay.
to match the airline's new, refreshed spirit.
Finally, after 8 years.
It was a long process.
Yeah.
But they wanted to get it right.
Right.
And in the end, they created this brand identity that felt fresh and modern,
Right.
while still respecting United's history
Right.
and, Saul Bass's iconic logo.
I mean, you're making me want to book a flight. It's amazing how design can elevate those mundane experiences.
It can, yeah.
Speaking of elevating experiences, let's head to Boston and explore Bierut's work on MIT Media Lab,
Right, yeah.
a place known for pushing the boundaries of innovation.
Absolutely.
So what were the design challenges there?
So they were looking for a new visual identity,
Okay.
but it was a lot more complex than just a new logo.
All right.
They needed something that reflected the lab's ever-evolving nature.
Right, because technology changes so quickly.
Yeah. And they wanted something that would unify the 23 different research groups that operate within the lab,
Okay.
all while still allowing each group to maintain their own unique identity.
So that sounds like a really tricky balancing act.
It is.
So did Bierut consider a dynamic identity?
He did.
Something that constantly changed and adapted?
He did. It seemed like the perfect solution
Right.
for an institution that's constantly pushing boundaries
Right.
and embracing new ideas.
Right.
However, as he explored the concept further, he started to question the effectiveness of constantly shifting identities.
I see what you're saying, because it can create confusion and dilute the overall brand message.
Exactly.
So did he end up going back to basics?
In a way, yeah.
Creating a simple static logo?
He decided to create this strong and recognizable logo for the Media Lab itself based on this 7x7 grid.
A grid?
A grid.
That sounds pretty basic.
Yeah, so it's the way that he used the grid that's so interesting.
Okay.
So he used that same grid as the foundation for developing individual logos for each of those 23 research groups.
Oh, so it's a family of logos, all connected by this underlying grid system.
Exactly. So it allowed each group to express their individuality
Okay.
while still being visually connected to the larger institution.
So that's a really clever way to create both unity and diversity
Right.
within a brand identity.
It is.
This deep dive into Bierut's design thinking has been eye-opening.
Yeah.
I'm so struck by his ability to adapt his approach to the unique needs of each project.
Yes.
He doesn't have this one-size-fits-all style.
Yeah, he's constantly evolving, experimenting. That's
Right.
kind
So-
of his thing.
That's what makes him so interesting.
Yeah.
You're picking up on something really important.
Okay.
Bierut's work is this reminder that design isn't about imposing a predetermined style.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the client's goals, the context of the project, and finding the most effective way to communicate their message.
And that can manifest in so many different ways.
Okay, I'm ready for one last design stop before we wrap up this journey.
Okay, last stop.
Where are we headed?
So let's visit a place where design is making a real difference in the lives of children.
Right.
The Robin Hood Foundation's Library Initiative.
The Robin Hood Foundation. I
Yeah.
know they do amazing work fighting poverty in New York City.
They do.
What's this about libraries?
So the Library Initiative is this project that's transforming these school libraries into these vibrant, engaging spaces for learning.
I love that. What was Bierut's role in this?
So he served as the graphic design director for the project,
Okay.
leading this team of talented designers and illustrators. And their approach was very unique. Instead of creating a single, uniform design for all of the libraries, they decided to create custom designs for each library,
Oh, wow.
working really closely with the schools
Okay.
and the communities that they serve.
So no cookie-cutter solutions.
No, not at all.
How did they ensure that each design was relevant to the students it served?
They took the time to really understand each school's needs, their aspirations.
Okay.
So, for example, at CS50 in the Bronx, they designed this grand entrance
Okay.
that welcomes students into this world of imagination
Okay.
with colorful murals and playful signage.
It must have made a huge impact on the students.
It did, yeah. It's like stepping into a whole different world.
Yeah, when you walk through those doors.
Yeah.
And what about the other schools?
Okay, so at PS 287 in Brooklyn,
Okay.
they commissioned this illustrator, Peter Urkel,
Okay.
to create black and white portraits of the students
Okay.
and incorporate their own words
Oh, wow.
into the artwork.
So the students themselves are shaping the design of their library.
Exactly.
I love that.
It must foster a sense of pride and ownership.
It must.
That's what makes this project so inspiring. It shows how design can empower communities
Right.
and create spaces that truly reflect the people that they serve.
This deep dive has been an eye-opening experience.
Good.
I feel like I have gained a whole new appreciation for the power of design,
Yeah.
not just to make things look good,
Right.
but to truly make a difference in the world.
Mm.
So what are some key takeaways for you?
Mm.
What will you carry with you from this exploration of Bierut's work?
Well, I think for me, it's just that, his ability to use design to solve these problems.
Right.
To communicate ideas, to
Yeah.
make a positive impact on the world.
Yes.
And also just the sheer diversity of his work.
Right.
I mean, he's designed everything from airlines to diners,
Right.
always finding a way to make each project unique and engaging.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, he doesn't shy away from any challenge.
He doesn't,
He's
yeah.
like, bring it on,
Yeah.
whatever you got.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we can all learn from, that
Right.
you don't have to be limited by, your perceived skill set or, your previous experience.
Right.
You can kind of push yourself to try new things,
Mm-hmm.
explore different areas.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe you'll discover, a hidden talent or a new passion.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now that we've explored Bierut's work, I'm curious,
Okay.
what everyday object or experience do you think could benefit from a design deep dive?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me think.
Because there's so many things out there.
There are so many things. Yeah. I think, public transportation could really use some attention.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Tell me more.
Like everything from the signage and wayfinding
Mm-hmm.
to even just like the overall aesthetic of buses and trains.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like functionality was prioritized over creating a really welcoming and enjoyable experience.
It can feel very sterile. Yeah.
Yeah, sterile is a good word. And you're hitting on something really important here, which is that design isn't just about aesthetics.
Right.
It's about creating solutions that improve people's lives.
Exactly. And in the case of public transportation, good design could really make a difference in encouraging people to choose a more sustainable mode of transportation.
Absolutely.
Imagine if public transportation felt more like an extension of our public spaces.
Yeah.
With thoughtful design that kind of enhances the journey, makes it more comfortable, more engaging, maybe even a bit delightful.
Delightful. I love that. Yeah, it could really transform the way people perceive public transit.
Right. Make it a more desirable option.
Exactly. Yeah. And, Bierut actually tackled a project that relates to this.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
His work with the New York City Department of Transportation on their Walk NYC wayfinding system.
Walk NYC. I've seen those kiosks all over the city. But New York is already so walkable.
Yeah.
What was the design challenge there?
Yeah, it might seem counterintuitive, but navigating New York City on foot can be surprisingly challenging.
Okay.
So for years, individual neighborhoods all had their own wayfinding systems,
Okay.
which create a lot of inconsistency and confusion.
So it was about creating this unified system that made sense on a citywide scale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they had to do this in a way that felt intuitive and user-friendly,
Right.
especially in a city where people are constantly on the move and bombarded with information,
Right.
like New York.
So how did Walk NYC address these challenges? Did they just create a giant map of the city and call it a day?
So they created maps, but they took this really clever approach.
Okay.
So they knew that people were already using GPS on their phones.
Right.
So they designed these printed maps that mimic that experience.
Okay.
So instead of those traditional static maps,
Right.
where north is always at the top, these maps actually orient themselves to the direction that you're facing.
Oh, that's really smart. Because it makes so much more sense.
It does.
When you're actually walking around. It's
Yeah.
like having a personal GPS right there in your hand.
Right.
Okay, so that's heads-up mapping.
Yeah.
And it was a gamble, but it turned out to be really user-friendly.
It did.
And they didn't stop there. They paid attention to all those little details,
Yeah.
from the color scheme to the size and placement of the signs.
Right. They even had to design new icons
Really?
for things that didn't exist in the standard set of transportation symbols.
Like what?
Well, they needed an icon for a shopping bag.
Oh, of course. Only in New York. It's fascinating how much thought goes into designing something that seems so simple.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the power of design thinking to solve problems and improve people's lives,
Right.
even in these seemingly small ways.
And these Walk NYC kiosks have been incredibly successful.
They have.
You see people using them all the time, even with GPS on their phones.
Yeah.
So it shows that sometimes the simplest, most well-designed solutions are really the most effective.
Right. Sometimes less is more.
Yeah. This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the power of design.
Good.
It's not just about making things look pretty, it's about making a difference.
Yeah.
So what's one thing you'll take away from this exploration of Bierut's work?
I think it's just this idea that good design is about more than just aesthetics.
Yes.
It's about solving problems, telling stories, connecting with people on this emotional level.
Yes.
It can even spark those important conversations
Yes.
and challenge the status quo, like in the Votomatic project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we took this deep dive together. It's
Yeah.
given me a whole new perspective on the power of design.
Wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. So keep your eyes open for those design opportunities in your own life. Who knows? You might be the one to create that next iconic logo, wayfinding system, or even that revolutionary public transportation experience we were talking about.
Now there's a challenge worth taking on.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of Michael Bierut. Until next time, keep exploring the world with a designer's eye.